Are you tired of pretending to be someone you're not, just so you can keep the peace, or avoid judgment, or fit into a life that maybe doesn't fit you anyway? No more, because the more you hide who you are, the more your mental health suffers. Over time, it can lead to stress, anxiety, disconnection, burnout, and a quiet sense that something's missing from your life. Authenticity matters, so today I'm taking a deep dive into why. Because being true to yourself isn't just a nice to have, it's absolutely essential for your mental and emotional well-being. And it changes everything. In this episode, you'll learn what authenticity really means, why it has such a huge impact on your mental health, and how to start showing up as your real self, without blowing up your entire life in the process. So, let's talk about why being true to yourself changes everything. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Mental Health. I'm Jeremy Godwin. Thanks for joining me. If you're new here, I'm all about making better mental health simple. I don't just do this randomly though. I'm a counsellor and writer, but I also went through a total breakdown that led to years of severe depression and anxiety. I struggled to find the kind of tools that I really needed back then, so now I create them. I share no-nonsense, practical advice that's based on both quality research and real experience of what actually works. So, welcome, and let's talk. What if the version of you that the world sees isn't actually the real you? Maybe you've been performing for so long that you've lost touch with who you actually are underneath it all. Or maybe you've been trying to be who others expect you to be, or trying not to rock the boat. And the idea of letting the real version of you out is probably terrifying. Because what if people don't like you? What if they leave? What if you lose the very connections you're afraid to disrupt? That fear makes total sense. But here's what matters even more. When you're not being yourself, your mental health suffers. You begin to feel disconnected, unsettled, and quietly resentful. And over time, that inner discomfort builds up into anxiety, stress, low self-worth, and maybe even feeling miserable with your life, or even just having a constant sense that something isn't quite right in your life. Being your true self really does change everything, because it helps you to live a life that feels much more satisfying and real. But when you've spent years editing or hiding parts of yourself just to get by, it can be easy to lose sight of who you really are underneath all that. But no more. Today is all about being your true and authentic self, and how you can start leaning into your authenticity more, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. This is about freeing yourself from the weight of pretending to be someone or something you're not, no matter how old you are. And it's about learning how to live, speak, and show up in a way that feels more honest and more grounded, and a lot more peaceful. So let's get ourselves on the same page with some definitions, and let's talk about what does authenticity mean. Alright, so let's talk about this whole being authentic business. Authenticity is one of those words that gets thrown around a lot, especially on social media, where it usually shows up alongside an artfully blurry photo of someone staring wistfully into the distance with the caption, "Just living my truth." But what does it actually mean? And more importantly, why does it matter for your mental health and well-being? Well, authenticity is about being real. It's about showing up as yourself, not the edited, polished, perfectly presented version you think you should be, but the actual you. The one with messy thoughts and strong opinions, and a weird love for late 90s pop songs that you'd never admit to enjoying publicly. Unless, of course, you're like me and you'll happily quote the Spice Girls as a valid source of life wisdom, and still think that Spice World the movie is a forgotten masterpiece. So, moving on after that little revelation, at its core, Authenticity is about aligning who you really are on the inside with how you show up on the outside. It means that your actions reflect your values, your decisions reflect your truth, and your relationships are built on honesty rather than performance or conformity. Now, on a practical level, being authentic might look like saying no when something doesn't feel right, even if everyone else is saying yes. It might mean wearing the thing you actually want to wear instead of what you think you're supposed to wear. It might be admitting that you're not okay, even when people expect you to be fine. And sometimes it means letting go of roles or identities that don't fit anymore, even if you've been carrying them around for years. It's not always loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as speaking a little more honestly, or making a decision that reflects your needs instead of what someone else expects of you. Authenticity can be subtle, and it can be scary, especially if you've spent a long time editing yourself in order to be liked or accepted or approved of. But you'll know when you're being authentic because it feels like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. For me, the first time I ever really felt like that was in 2014 when I threw all my ties in the bin. I'd left the corporate sector in 2012 after my breakdown made it impossible to leave the house, let alone go into an office. And those ties represented a version of me that I didn't want to be by that point a couple of years later. So I chucked them in the rubbish, and it was so incredibly satisfying and freeing. And that's the thing about allowing yourself to be authentic. Even if it's just by doing something small, like me and my ties in the trash decision, there's a sense of ease that comes once you've made the choice, even if it's a bit uncomfortable or weird at first. It's like something finally clicks into place inside you, like you're no longer pretending to be someone or something that you're not. And no, it's not about being perfect or consistent all the time. You can be authentic and still be figuring yourself out. In fact, most of us are. Welcome to the club. When it comes to your mental health, though, authenticity matters because when you're constantly performing, like trying to live up to expectations or hiding parts of yourself or pretending to be someone or something that you're not, it really takes a toll on you. It creates a gap between your inner world and your outer world. And that gap is where anxiety, stress, and low self-worth tend to settle in and fester. When you're not being true to yourself, you often end up feeling disconnected. From others, sure, but more importantly, disconnected from yourself. And that's when a lot of mental health struggles begin. Not knowing who you are, or not feeling like it's safe to be that person, or feeling like you're trapped in a version of you that no longer fits. Being authentic doesn't mean you have to burn your entire life to the ground and shout your truth from the rooftops, unless that's your thing, in which case, go for it. It really just means being honest with yourself about who you are and giving yourself permission to live in a way that reflects that, gently, bravely, and imperfectly. Because you can't build peace of mind on a foundation of pretending. And the longer you wait to be yourself, the more energy you waste on trying to be someone else. Of course, one of the things that can hold so many people back from taking that leap is fear. And more specifically, figuring out how to work through the fear of being seen for who you truly are, especially when people don't get it or when they make it clear they don't approve. But at the end of the day, how other people respond to you being yourself is their issue, not yours. And we're going to discuss that more shortly. First, though, let's talk about Why does authenticity matter? Alright then, so why is being authentic so important? Well, it's because without it, life becomes a never-ending performance. And performing all the time is absolutely exhausting. When you're constantly trying to shape yourself into what others expect or want from you, you end up living a life that doesn't actually feel like yours. It might look okay on the surface. You're doing the things, ticking the boxes, but deep down, something's missing. You start to feel disconnected from yourself, like you're playing a role rather than actually living your life. And that gap between the you the world sees and the you that you actually are, that's where things start to fall apart. Authenticity matters because it's about ownership. It's about stepping into your life with a sense of alignment, where your values, your choices, and your behaviors actually match who you are and what you care about. That creates more clarity. It helps you make decisions much more easily. It makes your relationships more genuine. And it gives you a sense of inner stability that doesn't depend on external validation. When you're being authentic, you don't have to keep second-guessing yourself or constantly asking, what will they think? Because you already know what you think, and that becomes your anchor. But let's be honest, being authentic isn't always easy. In fact, sometimes it can feel downright terrifying, because there's a level of vulnerability that comes with it. A fear that if people really saw you, they might not like what they see. And for a lot of us, that fear runs deep. You might have grown up in an environment where being different wasn't safe, or where being emotional got you labeled as too much. Maybe you learned early on that keeping the peace meant keeping yourself small. And those lessons stick. We end up going through life presenting different versions of ourselves to the world, so much so that we can lose sight of who we are underneath it all. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Hiding who you are doesn't guarantee love or acceptance. It just guarantees disconnection from yourself. When you suppress your real thoughts, feelings, or needs in order to be accepted, it chips away at your self-esteem over time. You begin to feel like who you are isn't good enough, or that your truth has to be edited to be palatable to others, or maybe even to yourself. And that's where the mental health impact really starts to take hold. Because when you're not being authentic, you're not giving yourself the space to fully exist. You might start to feel anxious for no clear reason, or find yourself stuck in low moods, or constantly on edge because you're trying to manage everyone else's perception of you. People-pleasing, perfectionism, and self-doubt often thrive in the absence of authenticity, and they can quietly do a lot of damage. The more you ignore or avoid your real self, the more pressure builds up inside, and eventually something has to give. That's when burnout, resentment, or breakdowns tend to rear their ugly heads and start creeping into all corners of your life. Not because you're weak, but because pretending to be someone else is mentally and emotionally unsustainable. When you start living more authentically, though, everything shifts. You feel lighter, more in control. Your relationships become deeper and more honest. You stop wasting energy on trying to be liked and start putting that energy into building a life that actually feels good to live. And no, it doesn't mean you'll never struggle again. But it does mean you'll be facing life as your whole self, which makes everything much more manageable. You're no longer fighting against yourself, and that brings a kind of peace that's hard to explain, but easy to feel once it's there. And the benefits are massive. being authentic helps you build confidence and self-trust. It makes your boundaries clearer and your stress levels lower. It boosts your resilience, improves emotional regulation, and helps you to feel much more connected, not just to others, but to your own life. You feel more grounded, more in tune with your needs, and much more capable of handling whatever comes your way. In short, it's one of the most powerful ways to take care of your mental health, because it brings you back to you. For something so essential, being true to yourself can feel surprisingly hard, and for good reason. Most of us have been taught from an early age to adjust ourselves to fit in. Maybe you were praised for being agreeable, or punished, even subtly, for speaking your mind. Maybe you learned that being accepted meant being easy to get along with, or not making a fuss. And over time, those messages pile up, and they can leave you feeling like your real self is somehow wrong, or inconvenient, or just far too much. And when that belief gets ingrained, it can feel safer to play a role than to risk being real. That fear of judgment or rejection is incredibly powerful, because when you let someone see the real you, not the version you curate, but the one with strong feelings and awkward opinions and unfiltered truth, you're exposing yourself to potential pain. If they turn away, it hurts. If they criticize you, it stings. But the paradox is that every time you choose to show up as your real self, even when it's uncomfortable, you take back a little piece of your power. You remind yourself that you can survive discomfort, that you can handle not being everyone's cup of tea. And the more you practice standing in your truth, kindly but firmly, the less you fear the fallout. Because authenticity doesn't just protect your mental health, it builds it. It teaches you that peace of mind isn't found in pleasing everyone else. It's found in knowing that you're living in alignment with who you really are. That doesn't mean you never feel awkward or unsure, but it does mean you stop betraying yourself to make other people more comfortable. And that's where real self-confidence comes from. Not from being loud or unshakable, but from being true to yourself and knowing that you can handle whatever happens next. So then, how do you do all that? Well, let's talk through some practical ways to approach it, but first, a quick break to hear from the brands who help me create this show each week. And welcome back. Now let's talk about how to embrace authenticity. Okay, first, get clear on your values. If you don't know what truly matters to you, then you're likely to drift through life being shaped by other people's expectations. Your values are your internal compass. They guide your decisions, shape your priorities, and define what authentic looks and feels like for you. When you're clear on them, it becomes so much easier to say yes or no with confidence. Start by identifying your main 5 core values. Things like honesty, independence, or balance, and ask yourself, how well does my current life reflect these? Wherever there's a gap, that's where there's an opportunity for you to make a change. If you'd like to dive deeper into values and mental health, I talked about it in episode 138, so I'll leave that linked in the description. Okay, next, start noticing when you're performing. One of the quickest ways to really connect with your true self is to notice when you're not being you. That feeling of faking it is your signal. Many of us perform without realizing it. We agree when we actually disagree, or we stay silent when we want to speak up. Ask yourself, who am I trying to be right now and why? You don't need to try and fix it all at once, but the act of noticing is a very powerful first step. Next, challenge your shoulds. When your inner voice is full of, I should do this or I should do that, it's often a sign that you're living by other people's rules. These shoulds usually come from family, from society, from social media, but not from you. Try catching those thoughts and asking, who says I should? And do I actually believe that? Consciously replacing the word should with want or choose shifts you out of obligation and into intention, and it helps you to feel more in control of your life. Okay, next, tune into how things feel, not just how they look. Something might look perfect on paper, but if it feels wrong in your gut, that matters. Authenticity means making choices based on alignment, not appearance. Notice where you feel tension or heaviness. That's useful feedback. I remember when I was going through my breakdown, and even the thought of walking into the office made me want to throw up my soul. So, that's probably a good example of being out of alignment with who you truly are. I mean, it's an extreme example, and it isn't always as in your face as that, but, you get my point. You don't need to act on those types of feelings straight away. But the more you pay attention to what feels right or off, and also what you want versus what you don't want, the more self-trust you'll begin to build. All right, next, practice telling the truth gently. Authenticity doesn't mean saying whatever you want without a filter. It means being real and kind at the same time. Instead of, I'm fine, try saying, it's been a tough week. Or try sharing a real opinion rather than staying silent. You don't have to overshare, just practice being a little more honest, one conversation at a time. It builds your self-trust and it helps others understand the real you. Next, learn to sit with discomfort. Being true to yourself won't always feel comfortable. You might feel awkward, exposed, or guilty when you stop people-pleasing or start setting boundaries. But that discomfort isn't harmful. It's a sign you're growing. Practice breathing through the urge to retreat or self-edit. And remind yourself that discomfort is temporary, but authenticity lasts. I covered discomfort in episode 239 if you'd like more on that topic. Okay, next. Let go of the need to be understood or to fit in. Not everyone will get you, and that's okay. Fitting in means changing yourself to be accepted, but belonging means being accepted as you are. Trying to fit in can feel safe, but it's fragile because it's often based on being something or someone that you're not. Focus on being real, not on being liked. When that fear of judgment creeps in, remind yourself, I'm allowed to be me, even if they don't understand. Honestly, it's not the end of the world if someone doesn't like you. It just means they're not for you. So go find the people who are for you. Next, release guilt and let go of unfinished stories. Guilt often shows up when your choices disappoint others. But guilt doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes it just means you're breaking old patterns. And you have to remember that not every story gets a neat and tidy ending. You might never get the apology, the understanding, or the validation that you hope for. And that's okay. You don't need someone else's permission to move forward. Your job is to protect your peace, not to chase after closure that will probably never come anyway. Next, stop waiting for the right time and just begin. Sorry to break it to you, but there's no perfect moment to start being yourself. There will always be some challenge, some obstacle, some reason why it would be better to wait until tomorrow. But confidence doesn't arrive before action, it's built through action. Take one small, honest step that reflects who you are. Say the thing. Wear the thing. Choose the thing. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be true to you. Okay, next, surround yourself with people who make it safe to be you. Look, you don't have to do this alone. Having even one person who accepts you without judgment can make a huge difference. Seek out those connections and nurture the ones that feel safe and gently step back from the ones that don't. You deserve to be seen, not just tolerated, but truly celebrated. Alright, next, give yourself permission to change. You're not a fixed identity destined to be the exact same way for the rest of your life. You're allowed to grow, to evolve, and to outgrow old versions of yourself. Don't cling on to who you've been just because it feels familiar. Ask yourself, is this still me? Does this still fit? If not, it's okay to let go and start becoming someone new. And so that leads to my next point. Let go of old roles and labels. We all carry roles we didn't choose, like the strong one, or the quiet one, or the reliable one. Those roles might have helped you once, but they can also keep you stuck. Start questioning them. Do I still want this? Or have I outgrown it? You're allowed to redefine who you are without apology. Okay, next, acknowledge your fear and act anyway. Fear is an unavoidable part of the process, but you can be afraid and still choose to be yourself. Instead of trying to eliminate fear, make space for it. Say to yourself, yes, I'm afraid, and I'm still choosing to be me. That way, fear doesn't get to run the show. Next, be kind to your past self. It's easy to look back with frustration or shame, to wish you'd figured things out sooner, but you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. Letting go of shame and regret opens the door to growth. Honor the version of you who survived, even if they didn't always thrive, because they got you to here. Okay, next, spend time alone without distraction. Solitude gives you the space you need to reconnect with your own voice. Without the noise of other people's opinions, you can finally start to hear what you actually think and feel. Try spending just 10 or 15 minutes a day without distractions. No phone, no TV, no podcasts. Sit with your thoughts, go for a walk, or write. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but with practice, that time can become a necessary and powerful opportunity to reset and reconnect with yourself. Because when it comes to being true to yourself, what it all boils down to is this. Being true to yourself isn't always easy. It can feel vulnerable, uncomfortable, and even risky at times. But the alternative is to keep hiding, shrinking, or bending yourself to fit into a life that doesn't really feel like it's yours. And the more you do that, the more disconnected you become from your own sense of peace, purpose, and confidence. Authenticity is a choice, and not just a one-off decision, but a conscious daily practice. And it takes courage. But with each small, honest step you take, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. That's when you begin to build a life that actually fits. And that's where real mental well-being starts to take root. The choice is yours, as it is with all things related to your well-being. So, what choice will you make today? Each week I like to finish up by sharing a quote about the week's topic, and I encourage you to take a few moments to really reflect on it and consider what it means to you. This week's quote is by an unknown author, and it is, "Authenticity is the courage to be yourself." Let me repeat that. Authenticity is the courage to be yourself. Alright, that's nearly it for this week. What's one part of yourself you've been hiding, and what would it feel like to set it free? Let me know in the comments and let's talk. because the more we talk about it, the easier it gets. Join my free mailing list at ltamh.com to stay up to date with new episodes and more, and become a supporter on Patreon for early access to ad-free episodes and exclusive content. They're both linked in the description. Thank you very much for joining me today. Look after yourself and make a conscious effort to share positivity and kindness out into the world, because you get back what you put out. Take care and talk to you next time. You might find my recent episode about why discomfort is a good thing helpful, so check it out next. It's linked in the description. Next week I'll be talking about self-doubt. Follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode, and have a great week. Let's Talk About Mental Health is an independent program. Discover more at ltamh.com.